Listen, I'm committed to holding on to my joy as I go into 2025 as best I can. But when I saw this article and I was reminded that you have been warning us, you have been screaming from the hills of Mount Reproductive Justice that personhood was coming. And it looks as though in the state of South Carolina, and when we look at the lawsuits being filed from the state of Texas as against the medical professionals in the state of New York for sending reproductive health care tools and medicinals into the state of Texas, we're at the precipice of personhood being able to undermine reproductive health care in some serious ways. What do you make of all this?
It's the brass ring. This is what they've been going for more than a decade now. And previously, states like Colorado and Mississippi were able to beat back these fetal personhood efforts. But since then, states, law enforcement, prosecutors in states like Alabama have been going rogue and prosecuting women and pregnant people, for example, for chemical endangerment, if they have substance abuse issues, rather than, providing them healthcare and rehabilitation services, we just toss them in jail. And that's
Mm.
because the conservative legal movement and the anti-choice movement has elevated a fertilized egg to the same level of importance when it comes to equal protection rights under the Constitution as a breathing person, as you and I, right?
Mm.
And so, what's really interesting about this fetal personhood effort is that a decade ago, they were all about ballot initiatives, right? Colorado, I
Yep.
think, beat back 3 in 2010. Mississippi beat back
Wow.
ballot initiatives because people don't like abortion restrictions. I
Right.
mean, if you look at the last election, right, Donald Trump won, but abortion also won. And
Mm.
so I think what Republicans and conservatives are realizing is that they have to really start finagling the legal system in
Yeah.
order to get to the outcome that they want. And the outcome that they want is that life is protected from the moment of conception, and
Mm.
that all fertilized eggs, blastocysts, zygotes, what have you, have the same
Jesus.
equal protection rights under the 14th Amendment as anybody else. And this is not something that has been, I mean, it's something that has become a little bit more escalated as of late. For example,
Yeah.
they're trying to sneak personhood in anywhere they can. So let's
Yep.
take, for example, the emergency room abortion case, right? The EMTALA case, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act. That's the case, the Idaho case last year that the Supreme Court said,
Right.
we shouldn't have taken it. It's too soon. We should have let the Ninth Circuit get their say and weigh in. Well, what's interesting about that case is that it is specifically a fetal personhood case because in that case, the conservatives on the courts and the conservative legal movement are arguing that it's not just the patient who is entitled to emergency stabilizing treatment, but
Mm.
also the quote unquote unborn child. And so, if you look at what Josh Hawley's wife, Erin Hawley, who is
Right.
a big muckety muck lawyer at Alliance Defending Freedom, during the Idaho EMTALA, the emergency abortion case oral arguments, she was arguing that abortion can never be an emergency care, can never be health care because it terminates the life of a person. And so, how could healthcare ever terminate the life of a
Mm.
person? And so, we're starting to see fetal personhood being slipped in here and there. Alabama with the IVF, with the
Mm.
decision that the Alabama Supreme Court made to declare that all, fertilized eggs, fertilized embryos are the same as children. So that
Mm.
if you have to destroy unused embryos, it's the same as murdering a kindergartner.
Right.
And this is what they believe.
Jesus.
And they're going to do whatever they can to get there. And they're coming at it from all different angles. And it's something that we should be really concerned about.
So my organization, Center for Law and Social Justice, raised and added our voices like so many others did in the state of New York to ensure that we had an equal rights amendment added to our Constitution. And we went through the laborious process. In New York, it has to go through 2 legislative sessions where it's voted affirmatively into law by the state legislature. And then that law basically says, okay, the legislature voted for this twice in 2 consecutive sessions. Now we're going to take it to the people, see what the people say. So it took a lot just to get to having this on our ballot initiative as Prop 1. And it passed overwhelmingly, along with a bunch of other crap that New York City passed. But we'll leave that alone for another day. And so I feel like, oh, great. And many others, we're like, okay, this is good. We have an equal rights amendment in New York State now. We're going to be somewhat protected. But Imani, I had this sneaking suspicion, and I want to get your thoughts on this. To me, it feels like that might be a false sense of hope, because if they are able to make personhood a national issue, is it the fact that it won't matter what your state constitution said on an issue like that? Who's going to trump? And I'm using that word intentionally. Would it be a nationwide abortion ban? Or if your state provides for you to have access to abortion, if the feds create a nationwide personhood reality or legislation, what would that do to those states that have been fighting feverishly to get an equal rights amendment and reproductive justice enshrined into their state constitutions?
Well, it would preempt them, right? I mean, that's why we have the supremacy clause. Although the supremacy clause only seems to work in favor of Republicans, right? Because when it
Only.
comes to the supremacy clause, for example, the emergency room abortion statute is a federal statute. It should trump Idaho's law to the contrary. It should trump Texas's law to the contrary. But conservatives are outcome determinative. They're cherry picking what they want to do in order to usher us into this Christian theocratic nation where abortion is criminalized, where eggs are people and they have the same rights as everybody else. And I mean, you're absolutely right. If there is a national personhood movement, if the Human Life, the Life at Conception Act, for example, gathers more steam in Congress, then that is going to supersede, preempt, become supreme to any contrary state laws.
Mm.
So when the Supreme Court said in Dobbs, the case that yeeted Roe into the sun, when they said that they wanted to return abortion back to the states, that was really just a sleight of hand. That was just something that they were saying to make people get comfortable with the idea that abortion is going to be banned because, oh, it's going to be banned in only the bad places, in the red states, right, in Alabama and Texas. But if it goes nationwide, then yeah, they're coming for California, they're coming for New York, and they're
Mm.
probably coming for those places first, right? Same as and similarly to the way that I think Donald Trump is going to be going after blue states first when it comes to mass deportation. He wants to hurt blue states. Like he wants to
Right.
stick it to blue states. So, yeah, we're in a world of hurt. I mean, we're definitely in a world of
Girl.
hurt. The one
Mm.
thing that is sort of that the one thing that gives me somewhat hopes, a little tiny inkling of hope, is that
Mm.
Republicans don't really all yet seem to be on board for criminalizing pregnant people as a matter of law, right?
Okay.
There certainly have been instances in Alabama where prosecutors and law enforcement have gone rogue and gone against what statutes have said, which is that these people are not supposed to be criminalized. Pregnant people shouldn't be criminalized. But I mean, who knows how long that's going to last. But for now, it seems as if, death penalty for pregnant people is not something that a lot of Republicans want yet. Who
Yet.
knows what happens in a month, right? Who knows what happens when Donald Trump takes office? I don't think he really cares that much about abortion, right? I think he used abortion to get back into the White House. So I think
Mhm.
whatever person is the last person to talk to him at the end of the day is going to be the person that decides what shiny thing he's going to be chasing. I'm not sure abortion is that thing. However, depending upon who he chooses ultimately for attorney general, whether it's Pam Bondi or somebody else, that's the person we need to look to figure out what's going to happen with abortion rights. Because if they decide to, for example, start enforcing the Comstock Act, then that's really going to throw a monkey wrench into all abortion care across the country.
And the
So,
Comstock Act, that so even if they were, let's say they were in some mythical space, let's say they were all on board, they would still have to get 60 votes in the Senate and what is it, 217 in the House. They barely got the House, which I'm so grateful for. And now they just had another Republican who is like, I'm not caucusing with anybody, although I'll still vote with Republicans. I'm just not doing no committees, and there's a whole lot of things happening with her. So that majority is shrinking as we speak. If anybody else gets plucked out of Congress to be a part of the administration, that will shrink even further. But the reality is they still have sufficient votes if they hold the line, which is questionable. They would be able to pass something in the House. In the Senate, they would still have to get 60 votes, but they've got 53 votes in on the Republican side in the Senate. So they're only short a handful, and I don't know how many Democrats are solidly enough in their districts that they could not be persuaded to peel off to support something like this. So
right.
even if they couldn't get that legislation through to where we have a nationwide abortion ban, reactivating the Comstock Act, that's already on the books. That was never repealed, so they wouldn't even have to. There are so many ways. I used to tell my kids there's many ways to get to Brooklyn, as a way of explaining we don't all have to do things the exact same way. There are so many ways to get to an abortion ban. They could revive the Comstock Act, as you said, which essentially means Damn.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn.
It means everything used for abortion care is now subject to search by the postal service.
Oh, but
And you
maybe they'll
also have
destroy the postal service before then because he's already talking about private. Maybe. Oh, Imani,
privatize it and
Imani.
just make it
Oh
go
my
broke. But we
God.
also have to understand that, organizations like ALEC and people like the Koch
Right.
brothers and the Mercers have been pouring millions and millions of dollars into trying to hold or to apply for and hold an Article 5 convention where they can just start amending the Constitution willy-nilly. And what do you
Right.
think is going to be first on the table? It's going to be personhood first, probably, and then birthright citizenship second.
Yep.
I mean, any if you have to look through everything that conservatives, especially the conservative legal movement, is doing through the lens of increasing the domestic supply of white infants, right? Whatever they can do to suppress Black and brown birth rates, including making sure that people who are born here are no longer citizens if they're Black or brown, including passing a personhood amendment, making sure that fertilized eggs have the same rights as you and I do. I mean,
Mm.
this is how it's going to get done. It's not going to be, it's just going to be a death by a thousand cuts. And the one thing that I'm really concerned about is I don't think that people are really prepared, or
Right.
they're in denial, or they're scared, all of which are completely normal reactions.
Yep.
But I need people to take the time, but this holiday season, this next month before this orange buffoon ends up back in office, and really, read summaries of Project 2025. Read, articles from people like me and Jess Piclo and people who understand that the institutions that are propping up this democracy are already crumbling.